The stars looked cold and distant from the bridge of the EDS Titan. Captain Jake Morrison stood quietly, watching the endless space through the large windows. His ship was the biggest and strongest in the human fleet. The crew worked around him, checking systems and running tests. Everything was quiet and normal, just like any other day on patrol. Lieutenant Amy Sullivan sat at her station, looking at the tactical screens. She was the ship's weapons officer, young but very smart. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls as she checked the new weapon systems. These weapons were different from anything the galaxy had seen before. The humans had been working on them in secret for years. Commander Rick Thompson walked between the engine stations, making sure everything ran perfectly. He was older than most of the crew, with gray hair and tired eyes, but his hands were steady and his mind was sharp. The ship's engines were his responsibility, and he took that job very seriously. The new hyperspace drives could move the ship faster than any alien technology. At the communication station, Lieutenant Sam Carter listened to radio signals from across the galaxy. Most of it was normal traffic, ships talking to space stations, merchants selling goods. But today, something was different. Deep space scanners were picking up strange signals, coded messages that seemed urgent and worried. The bridge was calm until the emergency signal came through. Red lights flashed and alarms rang out. Carter's fingers flew over his controls as he worked to decode the message. His face went pale as he read what appeared on his screen. "Captain Morrison, sir," Carter called out. "We have an urgent message from Ambassador Kyle Johnson. It's coded as maximum priority." Morrison walked over quickly. Johnson was humanity's representative to the Zephyrian Alliance, the group of alien species that controlled most of this part of the galaxy. If Johnson was sending emergency messages, something was very wrong. "Put it on the main screen," Morrison ordered. The message appeared and everyone on the bridge could see it. Johnson's face looked worried and tired. Behind him, alien officers moved around quickly, clearly in panic. "Captain Morrison, Admiral Martinez. Any human forces receiving this message," Johnson said. "The situation here is desperate. The Korthak Empire has launched their biggest attack yet. 3 of their battle groups have surrounded our main fleet in the Vega system. Admiral Kekstar's forces are trapped and taking heavy damage." Morrison felt his stomach drop. The Korthak Empire was the most dangerous enemy in this part of space. They were cruel and powerful, conquering worlds and enslaving entire species. Their ships were huge and their weapons could destroy planets. Johnson continued speaking. "The Alliance fleet is being destroyed. We estimate they have maybe 12 hours before complete defeat. The Korthaks are using new weapons we've never seen before. Our bio-organic ships can't stand against them. We need help immediately." The message showed pictures from the battle. Huge alien ships exploded in bright flashes. The Alliance vessels, which looked like living creatures made of metal and flesh, were being torn apart by red energy beams. Bodies floated in space where escape pods had been destroyed. "The Korthak commander is Warlord Thekmor," Johnson said. "He's never lost a battle. Intelligence reports say he has over 300 ships, including their newest dreadnoughts. If the Alliance falls here, the Korthaks will control the entire sector. Earth itself could be in danger within months." Morrison looked at his crew. They all understood what this meant. Humanity had been part of galactic civilization for only 20 years. Most aliens still thought of humans as newcomers, interesting, but not very important. The human fleet had never fought in a major space battle. "Sir," Sullivan said quietly, "our orders are to patrol this sector and test our new systems. We're not supposed to engage in combat without direct authorization from Earth Command." Morrison nodded, but he was already thinking ahead. The nearest human base was 6 days away at maximum speed. By the time they could get permission and send help, the Alliance would be destroyed. Millions of innocent people would die or become slaves. Carter interrupted his thoughts. "Captain, I'm receiving a direct communication from Admiral Elena Martinez on Earth." Martinez appeared on the screen. She was the commander of all human space forces, a tough woman who had fought in the colonies before joining the Space Navy. Her expression was serious but determined. Morrison, I know you've received Johnson's message, she said. The situation is worse than he reported. Our spy satellites show the Korthax are moving additional fleets toward Alliance territory. If they win at Vega, they'll have enough strength to attack human colonies next. She paused, looking directly at Morrison through the screen. I'm giving you emergency authorization to take the Third Fleet and assist the Alliance. This is not a request, Captain. This is a direct order from Earth Command. You will proceed to Vega immediately and engage Korthak forces. Morrison felt his heart beat faster. The Third Fleet consisted of 12 ships, all equipped with the newest human technology, but they had never been tested in real combat. The crew was well trained, but fighting practice targets was very different from facing an enemy that wanted to kill you. Admiral, Morrison said, the Third Fleet is still running tests on our new weapon systems. We don't know how they'll perform against Korthak shields and armor. Martinez smiled grimly. Morrison, our intelligence suggests that Korthak technology is designed to fight the kinds of weapons the Alliance uses. Energy beams, plasma cannons, bioorganic missiles. They've never faced human kinetic weapons or our new tactical systems. This might be exactly the advantage we need. Thompson stepped forward. Ma'am, the journey to Vega will take 18 hours at maximum hyperspace speed. The engines can handle it, but we'll be pushing them hard. Do whatever it takes, Commander, Martinez replied. The Alliance has been good to humanity. They welcomed us into galactic civilization when other species wanted to ignore us. Now they need our help. We're not going to let them down. Sullivan checked her displays again. Captain, I'm reading the battle reports from Vega. The Korthaks are using standard formation tactics. Heavy ships in the center, fast attack vessels on the flanks. Their command ship is protected by layers of escort vessels. Morrison studied the tactical information. The Korthak way of fighting was straightforward. They relied on having bigger guns and thicker armor than their enemies. They expected their opponents to fight the same way, meeting them head-on in direct combat. But humans had learned different lessons from their wars on Earth. Speed, surprise, and new technology could defeat even larger forces. The human fleet was smaller and newer, but it might have advantages the Korthaks had never faced. All ships, this is Captain Morrison, he announced over the fleet communication system. We have new orders from Earth Command. We're going to assist the Alliance fleet at Vega. This is our first major combat operation. I know you're all ready. He looked around the bridge at his crew. They were young, most of them, but they had trained hard. Carter was already plotting the hyperspace course. Sullivan was running final checks on the weapon systems. Thompson was preparing the engines for the long, fast journey ahead. Lieutenant Carter, send a message to all ships in the fleet, Morrison ordered. Tell them to prepare for immediate hyperspace jump. We leave in 30 minutes. As the crew worked to prepare the ship, Morrison thought about what they were flying toward. The Alliance was depending on them. If they failed, millions would die and the Korthak Empire would become unstoppable. But if they succeeded, humanity would prove itself as a real power in the galaxy. The stars still looked cold and distant, but now they held both danger and opportunity. In 18 hours, the human fleet would face its greatest test. The hyperspace journey to Vega felt like the longest 18 hours of Jake Morrison's life. The entire human fleet moved through the strange, twisted space between stars, their ships protected by energy fields that kept them safe from the dangerous forces around them. Morrison walked through the corridors of the EDS Titan, checking on his crew and making sure everyone was ready for what they might find. Lieutenant Amy Sullivan spent most of the journey studying everything they knew about Korthak weapons and ship designs. Her computer screen showed detailed pictures of enemy vessels, their gun positions, and their weak points. The Korthak ships were huge and heavily armored, built like flying fortresses designed to smash through enemy lines. Commander Rick Thompson monitored the engines constantly during the trip. The hyperspace drives were working at maximum power, pushing the ships faster than they had ever gone before. He checked every system twice, making sure nothing would fail when they needed it most. The ship's hull creaked and groaned under the stress, but everything held together. At his communication station, Lieutenant Sam Carter listened to radio signals from the Vega system. What he heard made everyone worried. Korthak commanders were broadcasting messages to each other, talking about how easy the battle was going. They laughed about the Alliance ships burning in space and joked about which planets they would conquer next. When the human fleet finally dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Vega system, the sight that greeted them was terrible. Yar. Main display screen showed a battlefield full of destruction. Pieces of destroyed ships floated everywhere, glowing metal and frozen air creating a field of debris that stretched for thousands of miles. Morrison ordered all ships to remain hidden while they figured out what was happening. The human vessels used their stealth systems, special technology that made them nearly invisible to enemy sensors. They moved carefully through the outer parts of the system, staying behind asteroids and using the cover of space dust clouds. The tactical display showed the grim situation clearly. The Alliance fleet, which had started with over 200 ships, was now down to maybe 30 vessels. Most of those were badly damaged, limping through space with failing engines and broken weapons. Some were completely dead, floating like metal tombstones in the darkness. The Korthak fleet, on the other hand, looked almost untouched. Their massive ships moved in perfect formation, hunting down the remaining Alliance vessels like predators chasing wounded prey. The enemy had 3 separate battle groups, each one bigger than the entire human fleet. Carter intercepted more Korthak communications, and what he heard made Morrison angry. Warlord Thekmor, the enemy commander, was broadcasting demands for complete surrender. His voice was cruel and mocking as he spoke to the Alliance survivors. "Your pathetic bioships are no match for Korthak power," Thekmor said in his harsh alien language, which the computers translated automatically. "Surrender now, and we will make your deaths quick. Continue fighting, and we will make you suffer. Before we kill you." Admiral Kextar, the Alliance commander, responded with dignity despite his desperate situation. His flagship was badly damaged, with holes in its living hull, and many of its organic weapons destroyed. "The Alliance does not surrender to murderers and slavers. We will fight until our last breath." Thekmor laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Then you will die slowly, alien. My ships will tear you apart piece by piece. Your worlds will burn, and your people will serve us as slaves." Morrison felt sick listening to the enemy commander's words. The Korthaks were not just conquerors, they were monsters who enjoyed causing pain and suffering. The Alliance species might be different from humans, but they were fighting for their families and their freedom. Sullivan studied the enemy positions carefully. "Captain, the Korthaks are using traditional battle tactics. Their heavy dreadnoughts are in the center, protected by layers of cruisers and destroyers. Fast attack ships are on the flanks, moving around to cut off any Alliance vessels trying to escape." Morrison nodded, watching the tactical display. The Korthak formation was strong but predictable. They expected their enemies to meet them in direct combat, ship against ship, gun against gun. That was how space battles had been fought for thousands of years across the galaxy. But humans had learned different lessons during their wars on Earth. Sometimes the smaller, faster force could defeat a larger enemy by using surprise and new tactics. Morrison began to see possibilities that the Korthaks had not considered. Captain Lisa Brooks, commanding the EDS Valiant, contacted Morrison on a secure channel. "Jake, there are Alliance survivors floating in escape pods throughout the battle area. Some of them have been out there for hours. We need to start rescue operations before their life support fails." Captain Danny Walsh of the EDS Thunder had a different suggestion. "Sir, I'm seeing perfect targets for our railgun systems. Those Korthak patrol ships on the outer edges are isolated from the main fleet. We could test our weapons on them without alerting the entire enemy force." Morrison considered both options. Saving Alliance lives was important, but so was gathering information about how well human weapons worked against Korthak armor and shields. He needed to make decisions that would give them the best chance of winning the larger battle. Thompson reported from the engine room. "Captain, all human ships are running perfectly. The stealth systems are working better than expected. Enemy sensors show no sign that they've detected us yet." That gave Morrison an idea. The human fleet was still completely hidden from Korthak detection. They could move into position and launch a surprise attack before the enemy even knew they were there. The element of surprise might be enough to even the odds against the much larger Korthak force. Morrison opened a communication channel to all the human ship commanders. Captain Julie Adams of the EDS Storm, Captain Tony Rivera of the EDS Lightning, and Captain Helen Foster of the EDS Hurricane all appeared on his screen. These were experienced officers who had trained for years with the new human technology. "Listen carefully," Morrison said. "We're going to hit them with everything we have, but we need to be smart about it. The Korthax have never faced human weapons or tactics. We're going to use that advantage." He outlined his plan. The human ships would split into 3 groups and attack from different directions at the same time. This would confuse the Korthak commanders and prevent them from concentrating their fire on any single human vessel. Sullivan had been studying the enemy fleet structure. "Captain, I've identified the priority targets. Thekmore's command ship is that massive dreadnought in the center. If we can destroy or disable it, the other Korthak ships might lose coordination." Carter added his own intelligence. "Sir, I've been monitoring their communications. The Korthaks use a very rigid command structure. Orders come from the top and flow down through specific channels. If we disrupt those channels, their fleet might not be able to respond effectively to our attacks." Morrison felt a cold determination settle over him. The Alliance had been good friends to humanity, welcoming them into galactic civilization when they were still newcomers to space travel. Now those friends were dying while cruel enemies prepared to enslave entire worlds. The human fleet began moving into attack positions, still hidden by their advanced stealth technology. Each ship took a different route through the asteroid fields and debris clouds, approaching the Korthak fleet from multiple angles. The enemy continued their methodical destruction of Alliance survivors, completely unaware that death was moving toward them through the darkness. Morrison looked at his crew one last time before the battle began. They were ready, their faces calm but determined. In a few minutes they would find out if human technology and tactics were good enough to defeat an enemy that had conquered half the galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison took a deep breath and looked at his crew one final time. Everyone was at their stations, ready for the fight of their lives. The bridge was quiet except for the soft humming of computers and the distant sound of the ship's engines. Outside the windows, the Korthak fleet continued destroying Alliance survivors, completely unaware that human ships were moving closer through the darkness. "All ships, this is Titan," Morrison said into his communication device. "Execute. Attack plan in 30 seconds. Remember, hit hard and hit fast. Make every shot count." Lieutenant Amy Sullivan's fingers hovered over her weapon controls. The railgun systems were charged and ready to fire. These weapons were completely different from anything used in space combat before. Instead of energy beams or plasma bolts, they fired solid metal rods at incredible speeds using powerful magnetic fields. Commander Rick Thompson watched his engine displays carefully. The moment they attacked, the human ships would lose their stealth protection. They would need maximum power to their shields and weapon systems. His engines were running perfectly, ready to give the ship everything it had. Lieutenant Sam Carter monitored Korthak communications. The enemy was still talking casually about their easy victory. Warlord Thekmore was giving orders for his ships to begin boarding the remaining Alliance vessels. The Korthaks wanted to capture some survivors for questioning and slave labor. 10 seconds, Morrison announced. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Attack. The human fleet revealed itself all at once, dropping their stealth systems and appearing like ghosts materializing from empty space. 12 human ships suddenly existed where sensors had shown nothing moments before. The Korthak fleet, spread out in their hunting formation, was caught completely by surprise. The EDS Titan fired first. Sullivan triggered the main railgun system, sending a stream of tungsten rods toward Warlord Thekmore's massive flagship. The metal projectiles traveled at nearly the speed of light, invisible until they struck their target. The Korthak shields, designed to stop energy weapons, offered no protection against solid matter moving at such incredible velocity. The tungsten rods punched through the enemy dreadnought's armor like bullets through paper. Each impact released enormous amounts of energy, creating explosions deep inside the ship's hull. Critical systems failed instantly. The bridge exploded, killing Thekmore and his command staff before they could even understand what was happening. The massive Korthak flagship began breaking apart from the inside. Secondary explosions rippled through its length as fuel tanks and ammunition storage areas detonated. Within seconds, the ship that had seemed invincible was splitting in half, its broken pieces tumbling through space in brilliant balls of fire. Captain Lisa Brooks led the EDS Valiant in a precision attack against Korthak troop transports. These ships were preparing to board Alliance vessels and capture survivors. Brooks launched her fighter squadrons, small, fast ships piloted by human pilots who had trained for this moment their entire careers. Major Steve Collins led Red Squadron in a devastating attack run. His fighters carried smart missiles, weapons that could think for themselves and adjust their course to hit moving targets. The missiles swarmed toward the enemy transports like angry insects, overwhelming their defensive systems through sheer numbers. The Korthak transports exploded one after another. Each ship that died meant hundreds of enemy soldiers would never board Alliance vessels. The survivors floating in space would be safe from capture and torture. Captain Danny Walsh demonstrated the true power of human railgun technology. The EDS Thunder fired sequential salvos at a Korthak battlecruiser, each shot precisely timed to hit a different section of the enemy ship. The first shot destroyed the shields. The second shot penetrated the armor. The third shot hit the reactor core. The enemy cruiser vanished in a flash of nuclear fire that could be seen from anywhere in the system. The explosion was so bright that it temporarily blinded the sensors on nearby ships. When the light faded, nothing remained but expanding clouds of superheated gas. Sullivan coordinated target information across the human fleet. Her computer systems talked to similar systems on other ships, sharing data about enemy positions and weak points. This allowed the human fleet to work together like a single organism, each ship knowing exactly what the others were doing. The Korthak fleet tried to respond, but their rigid command structure worked against them. With Thekmor dead and his flagship destroyed, the remaining commanders had no clear chain of authority. Some ships tried to retreat while others attempted to fight back. The confusion made them easy targets for human weapons. Captain Julie Adams of the EDS Storm used the chaos to her advantage. Her ship appeared suddenly next to a group of enemy destroyers, using micro-jumps through hyperspace to travel short distances instantly. Before the Korthaks could react, she fired a full spread of railgun projectiles that destroyed 3 ships in less than 10 seconds. The human tactical doctrine was proving devastatingly effective. Instead of the straightforward slugfest that Korthaks expected, they faced an enemy that appeared and disappeared unpredictably, striking from unexpected angles with weapons they had never encountered before. Captain Tony Rivera coordinated with the surviving Alliance ships. Admiral Kekstar's damaged flagship was still functional, and Rivera shared targeting data with the Alliance commander. Together, human and alien forces focused their fire on key enemy vessels, destroying them much more efficiently than either group could have managed alone. The tide of battle was turning rapidly. In the first 10 minutes of combat, the human fleet had destroyed over half of the Korthak heavy ships. The remaining enemy vessels were scattered and confused, their formation broken, and their command structure collapsed. Captain Helen Foster of the EDS Hurricane demonstrated human point defense systems. Enemy fighters and missiles that tried to attack her ship were destroyed by laser weapons that fired with computer-controlled precision. The lasers tracked multiple targets simultaneously, creating a protective barrier around the human vessels that was nearly impossible to penetrate. Sullivan watched her tactical display with amazement. The human weapons were performing even better than the engineers had predicted. Korthak armor and shields designed to resist energy weapons were completely useless against kinetic projectiles. The enemy had built their entire military around fighting a certain type of war, and humans were fighting a completely different type of war. Carter intercepted panicked communications from surviving Korthak ships. Their commanders were screaming about unknown weapons and impossible tactics. Some were calling for immediate retreat, while others demanded reinforcements. The confidence and arrogance they had shown just minutes earlier was completely gone. Morrison felt a grim satisfaction as he watched enemy ships explode on his display screen. These were the same monsters who had been joking about enslaving Alliance survivors and burning their worlds. Now they were learning what it felt like to face an enemy that was stronger and smarter than they were. But the battle was not over yet. Several Korthak battle groups still remained, and they were beginning to reorganize. Some enemy commanders were adapting to human tactics, spreading their ships out to make them harder targets and trying to use their superior numbers to overwhelm individual human vessels. Thompson reported that all human ships were still operational and fighting at full capacity. The advanced shield systems were protecting them from most enemy fire, while their weapons continued to devastate Korthak formations. But ammunition was not unlimited, and the enemy still had more ships than the human fleet could easily handle. Morrison opened communications to all human ships. "Excellent work, everyone. We've proven that our weapons and tactics work. Now we finish this fight and save every Alliance survivor we can. Keep hitting them hard." The space around Vega had become a graveyard of burning Korthak ships, but the battle was far from finished. The surviving Korthak commanders were beginning to understand that they faced something completely new and terrifying. Their massive ships, which had crushed dozens of alien fleets across the galaxy, were being destroyed by weapons they had never seen before. Captain Jake Morrison watched his tactical display as enemy vessels tried desperately to adapt to human fighting methods. Commander Rick Thompson activated the experimental shield harmonics that human engineers had been developing, in secret for years. These special energy fields vibrated at frequencies that made Korthak plasma weapons almost useless. The red energy beams that had torn through Alliance ships just bounced off human shields like raindrops hitting a window. Lieutenant Amy Sullivan coordinated the fleet's targeting systems as they engaged the remaining enemy battle groups. The Korthaks had spread their ships out, trying to make themselves harder targets. But human sensors were much more advanced than anything the galaxy had seen before. They could track multiple enemy vessels simultaneously and predict their movements. A group of desperate Korthak cruisers attempted a ramming attack against the EDS Titan. These ships accelerated to maximum speed, hoping to crash into Morrison's flagship and destroy it through sheer impact. But Lieutenant Sam Carter's electronic warfare systems jammed their navigation computers, sending the enemy ships spinning out of control past their intended target. Captain Lisa Brooks faced a different kind of attack. Enemy fighters swarmed toward her ship like angry insects, hoping to overwhelm her defenses through numbers alone. But the EDS Valiant's point defense lasers fired with perfect accuracy, destroying incoming targets with surgical precision. Each laser beam found its mark, and enemy fighters exploded in bright flashes throughout the space around her ship. The human artificial intelligence systems were working faster than any organic mind could think. Computer programs analyzed enemy movements, predicted their tactics, and suggested counterattacks all within fractions of a second. Human crews could respond to changing battle conditions almost instantly, while Korthak commanders were still trying to figure out what was happening. Captain Danny Walsh demonstrated another advantage of human technology. The EDS Thunder used its micro-jump capability to appear directly behind a Korthak dreadnought, in the one spot where the enemy ship's heavy armor was weakest. Walsh fired a concentrated barrage of tungsten rods into the ship's engine section, and the massive vessel lost power and began drifting helplessly through space. Sullivan noticed that some Korthak ships were attempting suicide runs, trying to ram human vessels even though it meant their own destruction. This showed how desperate the enemy had become, but it also revealed something about their culture. They seemed to believe that death in battle was better than the shame of defeat. Carter continued monitoring enemy communications, and what he heard was both satisfying and disturbing. Korthak commanders were screaming at each other, blaming their subordinates for the disaster. Some were calling their human enemies demons or monsters, unable to accept that they were simply facing superior technology and tactics. But the battle was far from over. Several enemy commanders had managed to regroup their remaining ships into a defensive formation. They positioned their heaviest vessels in a circle, protecting their damaged ships in the center, while their guns pointed outward, in all directions. This was a smart move that made them much harder to attack. Morrison realized that a direct assault on this formation would be very costly. Even with their superior weapons, human ships would take heavy damage trying to break through the enemy defensive line. He needed a different approach, something that would use human advantages while avoiding Korthak's strengths. Captain Julie Adams had an idea. The EDS Storm could use its stealth systems to approach the enemy formation from an unexpected angle. While the other human ships kept the Korthax busy with long-range fire, she could slip close enough to target their command ships with precision strikes. Captain Tony Rivera coordinated with the surviving Alliance vessels. Admiral Kextar's flagship was badly damaged but still had some weapons working. Rivera shared technical information about human shield harmonics, helping the Alliance ships adjust their own defensive systems to better resist Korthak plasma fire. The cooperation between human and Alliance forces was working better than anyone had expected. The two different technologies complemented each other perfectly. Human kinetic weapons could punch through enemy armor, while Alliance bioorganic systems could repair damage and adapt to changing conditions. Captain Helen Foster faced the most dangerous part of the remaining battle. A group of Korthak heavy cruisers had broken away from the main defensive formation and were trying to escape the system. If they got away, they would report human capabilities to the rest of the Korthak Empire, warning them about the new threat they faced. Foster pushed the EDS Hurricane to maximum speed, chasing the fleeing enemy ships through the outer parts of the Vega system. Her railguns fired continuously, sending streams of metal projectiles toward the retreating Korthax. One by one, the enemy ships exploded or lost power and began falling behind. Meanwhile, human Marines were boarding damaged Alliance ships to provide medical assistance and engineering support. Colonel Barry Mitchell led teams of soldiers wearing powered armor that made them stronger and faster than any normal human. They carried advanced medical equipment and repair tools that could save lives and fix critical ship systems. Dr. Patricia Lee, the fleet's chief medical officer, worked tirelessly to treat wounded Alliance personnel. Many of the alien survivors had injuries that would have been fatal without immediate treatment. Human medical technology, combined with knowledge about Alliance biology, was saving lives that everyone had thought were lost. The final phase of the battle showcased human versatility in ways that amazed even Morrison's own crew. Ships switched seamlessly between different types of combat depending on what the situation required. They could engage in long-range bombardment, close-quarters laser fighting, or electronic warfare with equal skill. Captain Rivera demonstrated the incredible strength of human shield technology. When a damaged Korthak battleship attempted one last ramming attack, Rivera positioned his ship directly in its path. The enemy vessel struck the EDS lightning shields at full speed, but instead of destroying the human ship, it simply bounced off and tumbled away, its hull cracked and broken from the impact. Thompson monitored the performance of all human ships throughout the battle. Every system was working perfectly, even under the extreme stress of combat. The engines, weapons, shields, and life support systems had all exceeded their design specifications. Human engineering was proving itself against the best technology the galaxy could offer. Alliance Admiral Kextar, rescued from his dying flagship and brought aboard the EDS Titan, watched the battle from Morrison's bridge with amazement. The Zephyrian leader had fought in space battles for over 50 years, but he had never seen anything like human military capabilities. "Your species fights like nothing we have ever encountered," Kextar told Morrison through his translation device. "The Korthaks have conquered dozens of civilizations, but they have never faced weapons like yours. How did humanity develop such advanced technology in so short a time?" Morrison smiled grimly as he watched another enemy ship explode on the tactical display. "We learned from studying everyone else's mistakes, Admiral, and we had some very good teachers." The space around Vega was now filled with the burning wreckage of Korthak ships. What had started as an overwhelming enemy advantage had become a complete disaster for the Empire's forces. But a few enemy vessels still remained, and they were fighting with the desperation of creatures that knew they were about to die. The battle was almost over, but the most dangerous moments often came when desperate enemies had nothing left to lose. The last Korthak command ship tried to escape as Captain Jake Morrison's tactical team identified its position among the scattered wreckage. The enemy vessel was badly damaged, but still dangerous, its remaining weapons firing desperately at any target within range. Lieutenant Amy Sullivan locked onto the ship with the EDS Titan's main railgun system and fired a final devastating salvo. The tungsten projectiles struck the enemy command vessel with perfect accuracy. The ship's bridge exploded in a brilliant flash of light, and its engines went silent. Without leadership, the surviving Korthak ships finally stopped fighting. Some tried to surrender while others attempted individual escapes, but human pursuit ships were ready for both responses. Captain Lisa Brooks led the pursuit of fleeing enemy vessels. Her pilots were skilled, and their ships were faster than anything the Korthaks possessed. One by one, the escaping ships were either captured or destroyed. Brooks made sure that no enemy vessel would return to Korthak space with information about human military capabilities. The space around Vega, which had been filled with the sounds of battle just hours before, became quiet except for the crackle of burning wreckage and the hum of rescue operations. Human ships moved carefully through the debris field, searching for Alliance survivors and making sure no enemy forces remained hidden among the destroyed vessels. Lieutenant Sam Carter monitored all communication frequencies, listening for any signs of additional Korthak forces approaching the system. But the enemy had committed everything to this battle, believing their victory was certain. No reinforcements were coming because none had been planned. The Korthak Empire had lost its most powerful fleet in a matter of hours. Admiral Elena Martinez arrived 3 days later with additional human fleets and diplomatic personnel. Her ships appeared at the edge of the Vega system like a moving city of metal and light. The sight of so many human vessels working together amazed the rescued Alliance survivors, who had never imagined that the newcomer species possessed such military strength. Ambassador Kyle Johnson, who had survived the initial Korthak attack by hiding in a damaged space station, began immediate negotiations with grateful Alliance representatives. The battle had proven that humanity was not just another minor species trying to find its place in galactic civilization. They were a major power with technology and tactics that could change the balance of power throughout this region of space. Human engineering teams worked alongside Alliance technicians to repair damaged alien vessels. The cooperation between the two species was remarkable. Human technology could fix problems that Alliance engineers thought were impossible, while alien bioorganic systems taught humans new ways to think about self-repairing materials and adaptive designs. The prisoner interrogations provided valuable intelligence about Korthak military capabilities and strategic planning. Major Chris Turner led teams of human intelligence officers who questioned captured enemy commanders. Warlord Thekmor had died when his flagship was destroyed, but other high-ranking Korthaks revealed information about their empire's future, plans and military weaknesses. The most important prisoner was General Vektar, Thekmor's second-in-command, who had been captured when his escape pod was recovered from the wreckage. Under questioning, he revealed that the Korthak Empire had been planning a massive invasion of Alliance territory, with Vega as just the first step in a campaign to conquer dozens of star systems. Turner learned that the Korthaks had never faced kinetic weapons like human railguns. Their military doctrine was based on thousands of years of fighting enemies, who used energy-based weapons similar to their own. The concept of throwing solid objects at incredible speeds was completely foreign to their way of thinking about warfare. Captain Jake Morrison found himself at the center of a media storm as news of the human victory spread throughout Alliance space. Ships from dozens of different species arrived at Vega to see the battlefield, where a small human fleet had destroyed the most feared military force in the galaxy. Reporters and military observers wanted to understand how such a dramatic victory had been possible. Morrison addressed representatives from over 50 alien species in a communication broadcast throughout Alliance territory. He stood on the bridge of the EDS Titan, with the debris field visible through the windows behind him, and spoke about humanity's commitment to protecting freedom and opposing tyranny, wherever it might appear. The human species did not come to the stars seeking conquest or glory, Morrison said. We came seeking friendship and knowledge. When we found friends in danger, we did what any decent people would do. We helped them. That is what humanity will always do when innocent lives are threatened by those who choose violence over peace. The victory at Vega became legendary throughout the galaxy within weeks of the battle. Stories spread from world to world about the mysterious human weapons that could destroy any ship. and the tactical genius that had turned certain defeat into overwhelming victory. Some of the stories were exaggerated, but the basic facts were impressive enough without embellishment. Within a month, dozens of species requested defensive alliances with humanity. Representatives from worlds that had never heard of Earth before the battle were suddenly very interested in human friendship and protection. The galactic political situation shifted dramatically as smaller species realized they had a powerful, new ally against aggressive empires. The Korthak Empire, having lost their most powerful fleet and their best military commander, retreated to their core systems and began negotiating for peace. Their remaining leaders understood that they could not win a war against an enemy whose weapons and tactics they did not understand. The age of Korthak expansion was over. Admiral Elena Martinez established the first joint human-alien naval academy on the liberated world of New Geneva. The planet had been freed from Korthak occupation just weeks after the battle at Vega, as enemy forces throughout the region withdrew to defend more important systems. New Geneva became a symbol of cooperation between different species working together for common goals. Captain Morrison accepted an assignment as the Academy's first tactical warfare instructor. His job was to teach alien cadets the principles of human military doctrine, helping them understand how speed, surprise, and technological innovation could defeat larger and seemingly stronger enemies. Students came from throughout Alliance space to learn from the hero of Vega. Lieutenant Amy Sullivan became the Academy's first weapons technology professor. She worked with alien engineers to develop new types of defensive systems that could protect their worlds from future threats. The combination of human kinetic weapons and Alliance bioorganic technology produced innovations that neither species could have achieved alone. Dr. Patricia Lee established the first interspecies medical research center at the Academy. Her work during the battle had shown how human medical technology could be adapted to treat alien physiology. The research center became a place where doctors from many different worlds shared knowledge and developed new treatments for diseases that affected multiple species. The story of the battle spread beyond military and political circles. Artists, writers, and musicians throughout the galaxy created works inspired by humanity's dramatic entrance onto the galactic stage. Children on dozens of worlds played games where they pretended to be human space captains fighting against evil empires. Captain Morrison often stood in his office at the Naval Academy, looking out at the stars and thinking about how much had changed since that day when they received Ambassador Johnson's desperate message. Humanity had proven itself worthy of respect and friendship from species that had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. The galaxy was safer because humans had answered the call when freedom was threatened. Other aggressive empires now thought twice before attacking peaceful worlds, knowing that humanity might respond with devastating force. The balance of power had shifted toward those who believed in justice and cooperation rather than conquest and oppression. Students at the Academy came from species that had been enemies for centuries, but were now learning to work together. The human example of defending others without asking for anything in return had inspired a new era of cooperation throughout this region of space. Morrison knew that this was just the beginning of humanity's role as guardians of galactic peace.